From the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and happy Labor Day weekend to everybody.
Yes, we are laboring on Labor Day weekend.
We are. In fact, the guy that mows our lawn, a wonderful man in his 80s, mind you, who does a great job, and he's more active than I am. More active than you are, in fact, Derek.
That is true.
He may be more active than many of you listening are. Jack is going to be out here on Labor Day, and he'll be laboring. And we asked him, "Are you sure you want to come out on Monday?" And he said, "No, that's the best day for me." So that's when he's coming out. So yay for Jack.
He is awesome.
He's a jack of all trades.
He truly is, yeah. Everybody around town knows him, too. He's one of those fellows that you need to know something about where to find something in this area, you talk to Jack.
You talk to Jack, exactly. Yeah. He is practically the unofficial mayor. Of town. The king of town. Homestar Runner reference. We want to just welcome you, and we're so grateful that you guys choose to join us every week for this crazy thing that we have been doing since March of 2005.
Yeah. It's really astonishing to think that we're within half a year of making this 20 years on this podcast. I mean, every major broadcast network now has podcasts. It's almost like a thing. Okay, we got a TV show. Now we need to have a podcast to go along with it.
There were very few podcasts when you and I started.
Yep.
In fact, Apple iTunes were begging for podcasts.
Please.
We were one of the first ones, probably the first Christian one up there.
One of the first, if not the first, sure. Yep. So, but we've been fairly consistent over these last 20 years. Times we were doing it 5 days a week. Other times we'd go a couple of months in between episodes, but we're still here, and we're just as crabby as ever, crabbier than ever. Well,
we've got stories for you, but before we get to that, we would want to remind you to download our app.
Please. iOS, Android, Amazon Kindle Fire. It's available for all of those for mobile devices, so you can carry us around and listen while you work.
And whistle while you work.
Or when you need to drive and keep eyes front, you can listen through your podcast that way, through the podcasting that way. But you can also
you don't have to watch.
Right. That's the thing. I mean, we got video content, we got audio content, but it's in fact to a lower bandwidth option. If you've got one of the video programs up, but you've got a slow connection, you can just choose to listen, and so you're not your phone or tablet's not trying to download the video if you're not watching.
Exactly.
But then the messaging function is really an important feature on the app that we've made use of.
It's so nice. It is a virtual community from people all over the world, and you guys support one another. You pray for one another. You have praise reports that you share with one another, and it's become a very important part of that app. And another reason to download the app is because we may not always have these free platforms from which to speak. Mars Hill may be closed one day. And when that happens, and it will happen eventually because prophecy tells us it will, then we want you to have access to the content that we can still share with you. Just think of this as an underground church.
We're an adjunct to a physical gathering. We're not trying to replace physical churches, but we know the reason we started this whole thing back in, started our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, which is coming up on 10 years, actually. In just 2 weeks, it'll be 10 years that we've been doing that weekly Bible study.
That's right, 9/11 of 2014.
Right. That is right. Was because people were coming up to us at conferences and asking us if we knew where they could find a local church teaching verse by verse exegesis. So that's why we do what we do. But again, we're not trying to replace a physical gathering because we need to gather together. And we're in a unique situation in that we get together with our friends and coworkers at Skywatch TV on a regular basis. But and so we've got other friends in the area like Vicki Joy Anderson and her dad Jeff who see the world the way we do. Many people around the world and just don't have that physical connection.
There are a lot of people who are crazy, just like we're crazy like foxes.
Yeah.
No, seriously, we just see the world differently, and we know that many of you also want to see the world clearly. Because of certain curation that takes place on social media, you can start to be steered in a particular direction.
That's David outside, our contractor, Christ Powered Construction, doing some work to finish up on the repairs that they've been doing on the house here. He's working on that metal door, that access hatch for the foundation, the crawl space.
Yeah, when you said that, I thought, what is that? So I'm glad you said something. Whether or not our audience heard it, I don't know.
Yeah, you may not have heard it, but
let's start with a crazy story, because we're crazy people.
Yes.
Let's begin with fake cows.
Fake cows.
Fake cows.
So we're not talking red heifers here. We're talking cows.
Oh, well.
But fake.
No, we're not talking about that picture from the Temple Mount, that alleged picture of a not red, not heifer being something. No, this is a story that is coming out of Reuters, and it is headlined, "Fake Cows Ready for Milking at U.S. State Fairs as Bird Flu Threat Looms." Looms is one of those charged words. H5N1 has been making its way through certain state dairy herds, and it is becoming problematic because in the past, bird flu has been spread at state fairs, usually from pigs. In other words, we would call it swine flu, H1N1, that is originally an avian flu that infected pigs. Pigs are able to pass things on to human beings. Therefore, it's called swine flu. I don't know if they're going to call this one cow flu or what. Right now, it's bird flu. H5N1 is, as I say, in a number of dairy herds. Well, it's very common for farmers and 4-Hers to take their cattle to state fairs.
Right.
But also, and I wasn't aware of this because honestly, I would never have gone to this exhibit if it existed when I've been to state fairs in the past. Apparently, it's a popular thing in Michigan, at least, and some other states, that if you've never milked a cow, you get to try it out.
Yeah, well, for us,
on a real cow.
City dwellers, that would be a thing.
Yeah, good luck not getting kicked.
Yeah,
but I got kicked as a kid all the time. Got used to it. Watched my dad get kicked in the head once.
Ooh. Yeah,
well, you're bending down, and suddenly, bang. Imagine if you are a city dweller. And you just, especially your children, hey, Bobby, Sally, going up here, we're going to learn how to milk a cow. Instead of doing this with a real cow, it is now being done with fiberglass cows with rubber teats and water-filled udders.
Well, that I see the point behind that, and
I do too.
Yeah.
I'm glad that this is something that's been done to introduce city kids to an activity that helps them to understand a little bit about where that milk comes from and the labor that it takes to provide it. Right.
I, growing up in Chicago, had no frame of reference. Visited my grandparents' farm in North Dakota every couple of years, but by then they were more or less retired from farming. Grandma was working at a 5 and dime in the town outside which they lived. Grandpa spent most of his spare time fishing. So I didn't get to see up close and personal.
You didn't get to milk a cow.
No, I didn't.
Honey, we should get one. We
did,
you can experience it.
Yeah. No, I'm good. We did go up there when they were still farming, but I was too little to really remember any of that. I gather that my dad had the experience as a Chicago boy of getting to milk a cow for the first time and getting laughed at. But it's the same thing. You adapt to whatever environment you're in.
That's just it. I wouldn't have fit into a city dweller domain when I was a child because all I knew was the country.
And that's one of the reasons that my mother, God bless her, I have a lot of respect for, is I've gotten older and have a broader frame of reference. I mean, when you're a kid, you're growing up, growing up in Chicago, you grow up thinking nothing happens outside that city. My friends in Illinois, especially when we lived in the southern part of the state here back in 2011 through 2015, began to understand why rural Illinois just really would just as soon Chicago leave the rest of the state alone.
I have to just make this comment. You always refer to it as the southern part of Illinois. See, I'm looking at the map and thinking we lived in central Illinois.
Yeah, East Central is what they call it.
It's anything south of Chicago is often called southern Illinois.
Well, I was looking at
I know.
Yeah. I was looking at I-70, and we were still north of I-70. So anyway, but yeah, you're right. Anything outside of Cook County is downstate. Even Rockford is downstate.
Which I think is hilarious.
Which is hilarious. But the folks in Chicago, in Illinois, especially south of like I-80, south of Bloomington, Champaign, that line, Peoria, Bloomington, Champaign, would just as soon Chicago go its own way.
And
I'm sure
get their wish one day.
Yeah, and I'm sure Californians feel the same way about say in the high desert would just as soon L.A., San Francisco, San Diego, just leave them alone.
Especially the farmers and the the vineyards that are north of that area, north of San Francisco.
Yeah, Fresno and up in that region, north of there, up towards Redding.
It's like a different state up there.
It really is. It's a lot more like Illinois. I was surprised. Went to Yuba City a couple of years ago and thought, well, this is flat,
beautiful.
Straight farmland. Am I
and
back in Illinois?
some of those areas, it's very hilly, but it's lots of lush trees, and it's great.
But the point is that urban dwellers don't really have understanding of the people who live in rural America and have an inflated sense of urban areas' importance.
We could get a fiberglass cow.
Well, we could. The thing that came to my mind is we talked about the practice for the red heifer ritual.
Oh,
in the city of David a while back, and they didn't have a heifer that sure looks like a steer to me.
It was a steer, and it was a white face red.
Yeah.
So not in any way, shape, or form correct.
Just hoping that whoever got the artificial cow did a better job of picking out the model that the Temple Institute did.
Please do. It's good to know that the real heifers are safe and real.
Yes.
And so far, 3 of them are still qualified.
Yeah.
3 of the 5.
Yeah. And we're coming up on the time when they should be eligible because it's 3 years. And based on when we first talked about that story a year ago, this September, like starting tomorrow.
I know.
They should be just about ready for the ritual.
And, Rosh Hashanah is coming up.
Yep.
Boy, many things are going to happen. Yeah. You and I are still planning on going to Israel in November.
Right.
We will make a decision one way or the other for sure, or to postpone it depending upon what happens in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, let's shift into talking about Israel right now for a few moments, because there are a couple of stories this week.
Fake cows. I mean, how can you possibly top that? Well, goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, there we go. Title of this week's episode, Fake Cows and Stuff. Last Sunday morning, so we would not have talked about this on PID Radio. I think we talked about it maybe on our Bible study last Sunday morning. The IDF and the IAF, the Israel Defense Forces, Israeli Air Force, took out about 6,000 Hezbollah rockets and drones that were being primed for launch. They were reportedly being readied for launch around 5 a.m. Israel time last Sunday morning. And Israel took out almost everything that Hezbollah was getting ready to throw at Israel.
It was a lot of rockets.
Yeah, and those were rockets that they believe had the range to strike some of the heavily populated areas around Tel Aviv. Don't know if they would have targeted Jerusalem. That gets controversial for Muslims. We like to think, okay, well, they're just going to try to level well, yeah, but Jerusalem factors into Islamic eschatology.
Yeah, big time.
Mecca and Medina, not a word about them in the Quran or the Hadith about the role of those two cities. Those are supposedly the 2 most holy sites in Islam, but they don't play any role in Islamic eschatology. But Jerusalem does.
It's a big one.
Yeah. So if they flatten Jerusalem, they'll have some explaining to do to the Mahdi when he shows up and says, hey, I'm supposed to be here at Al-Aqsa and hand over,
Isa's supposed to point to me, and we're all supposed to get along together.
And it's supposed to happen at Jerusalem. So anyway, Tel Aviv probably would have been targeted, though. So Israel took that out. They still managed to launch about 300 rockets, which Israel took down. Most of them, the ones they didn't, landed in open areas. This could have sparked a wider conflagration in the area, which is why we're watching this very closely.
I think that was the whole plan. Iran, from what I understand, has been waiting for Hezbollah to start it.
Mm-hmm.
And once Hezbollah got going, then they were going to start their rockets. In other words, the IDF and Iron Dome would be busy.
Right. Overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's sort of like that 1980s, 90s, 80s, I guess, 70s, 80s video game, Missile Command.
I never played that.
Oh, yeah. That was big for my friends and me when we'd go to the arcade or whatever, or bowling, and you'd play Missile Command, and just you get to a certain level and suddenly those missiles are coming in and they're splitting off MIRVs, multiple independently. Yeah. And, okay, my civilization is now toast. That's kind of what Iran through Hezbollah and Hamas is hoping to do, just overwhelm Iron Dome so they can't possibly shoot down all the incoming. But Israel, by destroying them on the ground, knocked down, basically took the air out of the balloon.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a pop either. It was sort of like a slow deflate where you hear just the balloon going, Meow. It was really a big fizzle. I think really disappointing for Hezbollah that they had put that many weapons on hot status, ready to go, and then Israel suddenly comes in and boom, they're gone. 300 or so were launched. No damage from that attack at all. They're trying to claim that they hit some Israeli military sites, and so that counts as sufficient retribution for taking out the number 2 man in Hezbollah. Okay, well, I pray that is true. There's been a report this week from unnamed Western intelligence analysts claiming that Hezbollah is ready to launch within 2 or 3 days.
Meanwhile, Sinwar is sitting there in his dress.
Well, that's the other story.
Telling people what to do.
Wanted to talk about Yahya Sinwar, who's taken over Hamas after the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, is reportedly, whether this is true or not, or if this is a story that's being put out there to make him look weak.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to embarrass him.
Right. The story is that Sinwar is hiding in plain sight, dressed as a woman. In that culture, the Arabic culture, I don't know if machismo or machismo is the proper title, but toxic masculinity is a big thing.
Maybe he could box for the Olympics next year. Or next time.
Like the Algerian guy, yeah. So whether that's true or not, the other story about Sinwar is that the reason Hezbollah cannot release the hostages, and there's still 105 not accounted for, it's believed that there are only 20 or 22 still alive, and Sinwar has got them traveling with him through the tunnels of Gaza. He's using them to surround him as human shields. This was reported by the Jewish Chronicle Wednesday this week. And the columnist Ilan Perry writes that only about 20 of the hostages are being held by Hamas. He quotes intelligence sources. He said these are being kept in handcuffs as human shields around Yahya Sinwar.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's reprehensible.
It is. And this is the thing. When Western political leaders say too many innocent Arabs, and I use that term rather than Palestinian because that's sort of been ingrained in us as a branding, which is why around the mid-1960s, the Arabs who live in that area were rebranded as Palestinian.
That's not an ethnicity.
It's not an ethnicity. Yeah, it was a KGB tactic to make it seem as though they had a legitimate claim to the land. No, they're Arabs from Arabia. Anyway, there are innocents who have died in this war. There's no conflict. There's no question about that. On all sides. Beginning with the 1,200 who were killed in Israel by Hamas. But Hamas has deliberately surrounded itself, like Sinwar is reportedly doing, with civilians. In fact, the Hezbollah launch, the IDF reported early this week that of the 320 that they did manage to launch, 90% of them came from launchers within 500 feet of schools, mosques, or other public buildings.
Hiding behind children.
Hiding behind children. And that's what Hamas has been doing. So when Kamala Harris says, as she did in the interview, the CNN interview that we'll talk about, that too many Arab civilians in Gaza have died, she's right. But the blame needs to be put on Hamas.
Exactly. Not on Israel. Not on Israel at all. I found her, and we'll talk about it after the break, all of her interview. But I think one of the things we have to remember with regard to her statement, and I'll just pick that out because she said Israel has a right to defend itself. We'll unpack that more later, but that statement is a little bit deceitful because she may make that statement and say, yeah, Israel has a right to defend itself. But what the quiet, unspoken part is, and the U.S. has the right to not arm them.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what's going on. Think about all of the, if you want to say the word ammunition or materiel or whatever, Iron Dome doesn't take down incoming missiles without something to throw at it.
Right.
It's not lasers.
Right.
It requires arming it with rockets or missiles or whatever they're using to shoot this down.
Right. And those are produced in a factory. They are, you need the raw materials, you need the workers, the crews, and you need the logistics chain to get those from the manufacturer to Israel.
Exactly. And if the United States says, yeah, I know that we signed a contract saying that we shouldn't send you this, this, and this, we're going to hold that back. Blackmail is what it amounts to.
Right. The other aspect of that, of course, is the cost. It's like, what did I've heard like $50,000 per Iron Dome rocket that gets fired. It's
very expensive.
Compared to some of the incoming rockets that may be produced for as little as $5,000 a pop or even less.
Yeah. Especially when they're using a drone.
Yeah. Yeah. So Israel is, and this is the thing. I know that there is a very vocal and I would say toxic segment of humanity, many of whom are professing Christians or claim to be Christians, saying that Israel runs the United States.
No.
That there's a small cabal of Jews who are controlling everything that we do here in the United States. It's really the other way around. The tail is not wagging the dog. The United States has been running Israel. Israel wants to be the friend of the United States because we are still the most powerful nation on earth.
For now.
We're squandering that.
Yeah, we are throwing that away.
But Israel really needs the United States as an ally. And we have not always been there for Israel over the past years. This was one of the surprising things when I was researching this for the presentation I gave in Ohio, that the United States, even in 1948, when Israel was fighting to survive, surrounded by Arab neighbors who attacked the day it declared independence, the United States had an arms embargo.
Yes. Yeah.
On Israel.
I would highly recommend, if you have not yet watched Derek's presentation, you can watch it for free.
Well, not that one, though. I'm talking about, this was the one on the history of Israel. That one is
the one from Sunday morning?
One from Sunday morning about our Israel tour.
Yeah, but you get into some of the history.
A little bit.
Early on.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's a taste of it. It's enough to make you want to read more. And a lot of this comes from a book that you can get called The Secret War Against the Jews.
Right.
And trust me, it is well worth the read. If you say you love the Lord, you love the God who created all of us, and you have read the Bible and you believe in it, then please read this, because there is a whole lot more that's taken place in the last 150 years than we're being told.
Right. The Secret War Against the Jews. The authors are John Loftus, Loftus, and Mark Aarons, Aarons. It was published in 1994, so this is not a new book. It was a New York Times bestseller 30 years ago, but most of us have not been exposed to it. Certainly the media is not going to talk about it because it's not the history that we've been taught. And some of the people who they call out in that book, I mean, one of them's got an airport at Washington, D.C. named for him. Yeah. And in that book, they openly call him a traitor.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, now you really have to read the book.
Yeah.
And this lie, this very popular, tempting lie that we have been told, and many of us have fallen for. I know that very early on, when you and I were first looking at conspiracy theories, I was trending toward that, thinking, okay, maybe there's something to this. And then I started digging into it so I could find out myself. And that is one of the reasons I'm writing the Red Wing saga.
Yeah.
Is to clear that up.
Right, right.
And it's all leading to 1948. If you've read any of the books, there's a reason why I named the clans Stewart and Sinclair. So there you go.
Illuminati bloodlines. No!
Well, that's okay. My mother's, a Smith. Oh, I know. That's one of those little septs of the bloodlines.
Collins. You got Collins in your ancestry.
I know,
too.
I do. Yeah. All kinds of them. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Barnabas? Maybe that's why I'm so sensitive to light. Yeah, Phil Collins.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Studio.
One more story, though, before we get to the break, and that is going back to science.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, I wasn't quite done with my science, but it was a nice thing to go into Israel. And that is that the FDA has now approved emergency authorization for a Novavax updated COVID vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Use 2 words, it's probably going to get us kicked off. But this is a news story that is right out there at CIDRAP. You can go there. CIDRAP is a great source for finding out what's going on in the world with regards to virology and bacteriology. This is a protein-based vaccine. It's old school.
In other words, the way they used to do it.
The way they used to do it. They'd either use an attenuated version of the virus. In other words, they sort of clipped its wings, but made it less virulent. Or a protein that would allow your immune system to see the protein and go, oops, invader.
Mm-hmm.
It's a protein made by the incoming virus. We're not talking about spike proteins. We're talking about a protein itself, not anything to code for the actual protein. This is a very safe way of doing a vaccine. But the problem is when they use the term emergency authorization, that tells me it hasn't gone through human trials.
Right.
You never know what might be in there that could have an adverse reaction.
And going back to something you were saying back 4 years ago when Operation Warp Speed was announced by President Trump, that this virus, the RNA viruses mutate so quickly that trying to keep up with the mutations with any kind of vaccine is a fool's errand.
It really is. It's just, it's like whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
It's very much like
but
whack-a-mole.
The moles are on speed.
Yeah, they're like Glory.
They're hopped up on goofballs.
Glory's pretty darn fast, so
yes,
who
she
knows?
is.
Maybe that's it. But this is this particular Novavax vaccine, protein-based, is it's based on one of the newest versions of the coronavirus, and it's going to change by the time it actually gets rolled out and starts going into arms. It will probably be very ineffective or only slightly effective.
Right. And let me just say this. They've got a COVID outbreak at the nursing home where my mother is a resident.
Mm-hmm.
Mom is 87. She tested positive and last week. Her friend, the retired pastor there, Leo, he's 86.
He's got comorbidities.
And he's got comorbidities, right? He's diabetic, which is one of the most dangerous comorbidities for people with that virus. 4 years ago, they were on lockdown. Could not go visit my mother for quite a while. This time around, it's like there's a sign on the front door that says, COVID outbreak, please wear a mask. So I put on my little surgical mask, which, as we know from research now, is like trying to keep mosquitoes out of your yard with a chain link fence. But they were okay with that. And they were eating, even though there are, in the memory care unit where Mom is, there are 13 residents there who have it.
And they're all fine.
And they're all fine, and they were eating in their dining hall again. Last week, Mom ate in her room because she had it, but this week they're all back in the dining room.
Trust me, this is a place that is very careful with their residents.
Yes.
The fact is that the current iteration of the virus, it has mutated to a point where it's, as with many previous coronaviruses in history, it has mutated to become just like a cold.
That's
now,
exactly.
Some people will get a tougher version of that cold.
Yes.
How many of us have friends who have, boy, this cold, this cough is just lasting for weeks.
Hanging on for weeks, yep.
Before the era of, before 2019, there were lots of colds that would come around and somebody, I've got a chest cold.
Yeah.
And they're coughing.
That's what Leo said. We used to just call this the summer cold.
Yeah, I know. And
right.
I'm very thankful that it has mutated to that point.
Right.
It doesn't mean that something else won't come along.
True.
And I will just briefly mention that Mpox, monkeypox it used to be called, is still infecting thousands of people in the DRC.
Right.
And hundreds of people have gotten very sick, and a lot of people have died.
Yeah.
Presently, the death rate amongst adults is about 5%. That's high.
Very high.
And among children, about 10%, which again is high, but it's unknown what the actual health condition of the individuals who were infected was before. We don't know how long before they got any kind of medical assistance. This is not like you and I, Derek.
Mm-hmm.
We're both really healthy, and we have access to very good nutrition and clean water.
Right.
Not everybody in third world nations and parts of the DRC are very third world.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really know what condition the people were in before they got infected, but the fact is that it is a real disease. It's been around. It was discovered in the 1940s. It's been around for a long, long time, probably a long time before Western scientists ever, quote unquote, discovered it.
Yeah.
Smallpox, which is another version, it's another cousin to this. It's been around since probably 2000 BC or earlier, because there's evidence of it in mummies from Egypt. So, these viruses have been around for a long, long time.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the fact that it had been around for at least 80 years, because I know we got some pushback on our previous episode where we talked about Mpox. Oh, no, it's fake. It's made up.
No, it's
another
real. I was following this back in
scamdemic.
2005.
Right. Yeah. This is a real disease. Now, it doesn't mean, and remember, we're the same people who last November, thanks to Sharon watching the World Health Organization, were telling you about the international health regulations and how they would try to use that as a power grab to impose a draconian global government on all of us. So we're not saying we should all be very, very afraid. We're just saying, look, this is a real disease, but in the spirit of never letting the crisis go to waste, they will probably use it to try.
Probably will.
Right.
So something is going to come along.
Both those things can be true.
Why do we know something is coming along? Because we read prophecy.
Yes. Amen to that.
So now for a break.
Coming up, so many things to talk about. The interview.
Oh, I know.
You know, it's big
minutes.
news when a politician actually deigns to sit down for an interview. Isn't it like part of your job?
Yeah.
Also, Venezuelan gangs taking over a city in Colorado.
Yes.
Disturbing. And Ukraine trying to drag the U.S. and U.K. into its war. That and more when PID Radio continues. It's time for back to school, and we have a special offer in September at the Gilbert House store.
Back to school, it's impossible to believe. Where did the year go? Well, October is also approaching, so we have a deal for you. $35 only plus shipping and handling will get you 2 amazing books and a CD, which is interviews with Dr. Michael Heiser.
Preparing you for All Hallows Eve, the month of October, when we begin to think about the spirit realm, our book Veneration, which takes a deep dive into the cult of the Nephilim around ancient Israel, the source of the demons that plague the world to this day.
And also a wonderful book by our friend Vicki Joy Anderson, They Only Come Out at Night. This is your manual for spiritual warfare. This should be in your church library.
Those 2 books plus a 7-hour audio CD with Dr. Michael S. Heiser discussing the unseen realm. These 2 books plus the CD, just $35 plus shipping and handling only at gilberthouse.org/store. Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
Oh, that makes me Sharon Gilbert. It makes me very happy. We're glad that you just you've come back for part 2. We didn't scare you off, but with part 1, want to remind you that we still plan to go to Israel in November. So go to gilberthouse.org/travel, and you will find all of the information there. If by chance we decide to postpone it, we will put that announcement there, and we'll also talk about it on this platform and probably put it on all of our social medias.
Yes.
So pay attention to that. By the way, Derek and I both have Telegram channels. And I've got Sharon's room on my channel, and you've got the View from the Bunker.
View from the Bunker, right. So we will, in fact, we'll talk a little bit more about that, too. That relates to one of the question that we will answer at the end of the program this week, which, of course, you can ask us through the app, which you'll find at gilberthouse.org/app.
Before we get into the interview, which is going to be very interesting, want to mention one of the stories that I shared this morning. I think I may have shared it on Telegram, but definitely did share it on X. And that is, there is a startup company that wants to help us see at night.
Oh, really?
Say you're out walking in the woods and you're just it's so dark out there. I just wish I could see my phone better and see my feet better. And boy, I really could use a light. Oh, hey, I've got that new app on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just tap that and I will move the space mirror. Yeah, you can tell where this is going, don't you?
Uh-huh.
The space mirror, which will reflect the sun right down on me.
Uh-huh. Didn't Elton John write a song about that years ago? Don't let the sun come down on me.
Oh, gosh. I am telling you, it is just the, first of all, with the curvature of the earth, I do not know unless you've got a system of mirrors up there
Mm-hmm.
that you could possibly do that. You also don't know what the downside of something, assuming it could be done,
Yeah.
might be. Having anyone control mirrors in space that can reflect the sun,
Uh-huh.
that almost sounds like a weapon.
Kind of does.
Maybe does, but at the
Well-
very least, it sounds like snake oil to me.
Yeah, well, we need that to fight global cooling. We need. Oh.
Well, I'm just thinking, here's the crazy part. I'm standing in the dark. If only I had some light. Oh, hey, here's an idea. Use the flashlight on your phone.
There you go.
Yeah.
Which is built in as an app. Do not
know.
download another app because it's stealing, more than likely, stealing data off your phone.
Oh, I know. I can't think of any circumstance where you would need to have the sun give me a personal beam of light.
Yeah. And, okay. You go to do it, and then you get a little message. You are user number 478,200.
queue
Yeah, you are in the queue. Yeah. You'll get your request in 14
Or here's
hours.
another one. Oh, the beam of light works. Oh, wait a minute. Am I being levitated? Is it a UFO? Is it a cow? It's cows all over the place today.
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway.
There was no cow harmed in the interview with Vice President Harris.
Vice President Harris and her emotional support governor, Tim Walz.
That's funny.
I wish I'd thought of that, but that was not original to me.
And if you have not seen it, you need to watch the video that Derek's going to tell you about, because it will show you the 2-shot and the 3-shot. So you see Walz and Harris together at this table. The lighting is terrible, but the positioning and the angle of the camera makes him look huge. He's in the foreground, and she looks like a little girl.
Now, she's rather petite anyway. I think she's only like 5'2".
Oh, I know, but he's looming
Right.
over her like Daddy is there to take care of you.
A lot of observers have asked the question, and we do this when we're filming at Skywatch TV, even here on our little rudimentary set. We'll adjust the chairs so that Carl Gallups always looks the tallest, per his request. But seriously, when we're doing the panel at Skywatch TV, you got 6 guests up there, and they will try to balance things out so that nobody looks uneven.
Gigantic. Yeah.
And, that meant, say, Carl's chair usually goes down a little lower, and your chair will come up a little bit. Catherine Horn's chair will come up a little bit.
Depends on where you are on the curved desk.
Right.
Because of
the angle of the camera.
Perspective. Yeah.
Well, whoever set that shot should have had, CNN did not do her any favors. First of all, she was wearing a gray suit. They chose to film it in what looked like an unused employee cafeteria.
Yeah.
And some of the tables in the background, you see like a coffee cup here and there. It's like, did they want that? I mean, it looks like nobody remembered to clean up.
I know.
But yes, she came across looking very small, not very presidential, just from the way things were set and the way things were lit, not very flattering. And then her answers, it wasn't a disaster on the order of Joe Biden's debate performance against President Trump, but it was
pretty close.
It didn't do her any favors. I mean, when left-leaning media outlets like Politico, the headline reads, Harris survives first sit-down interview with few missteps. That's like damning with faint praise.
Well, the missteps, mind you, she recorded nearly an hour's worth, and it was edited down to 18 minutes, which I think is hilarious because that's about the time of missing recording
time on that
in
Nixon tapes.
The Nixon tapes.
Yeah.
So we found them. Turns out that it was Harris who'd gone back in time and recorded something and then came back here.
Yeah. So what did they edit out? What they left in, presumably, was the stuff that came across the
good
best.
Stuff.
CNN, Dana Bash, the interviewer, is no fan of Donald Trump. She's been very clear about that over the past
But
6
she
years.
did not softball it. What they kept in was not softball.
No, she asked some good questions. Now, she could have followed up more assertively than she did.
Didn't
and she
need
didn't.
to. Harris did herself in
Yeah.
with the replies.
Yeah.
The video that Derek and I are familiar with, and you should watch it, Jesus Enrique Rosas, he does royal commentary, but he's also a body language expert. He teaches body language analysis. And it's the body language guy.
Body language guy.
Yeah, on YouTube.
Oh.
And he's also on X. He examined this.
Mm-hmm. Showed where he thought she was really reaching because she was not familiar enough with the material or had not practiced her response enough. Places where she exhibited a lack of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
She did not come across as self-assured. Her first response to the first question, what will you do? The question was, what would you do on day one? And then Dana Bash had to ask the question because what she got was word salad as a response from Harris.
So she pushed her 2 or 3 more times.
Yeah. So what are you doing on day one? Well, I want to make sure we do all we can to strengthen the middle class. Okay. How are you going to do that? What are you going to do on day one to do that? And she just did not have a firm policy response.
Their website still does not have anything specific on it. There is no platform on it.
With Trump, you know what you're going to get. He's been running on the same thing since 2016. Close the borders, drill, baby, drill.
Mm-hmm.
You know, energy independence, closing the borders. And he's been running on that ever since. That's consistent. Now, she pushed Harris on, okay, you were against the wall. Why have you changed on that? You were against fracking when she ran for president in 2020. She said on day one she would ban fracking, which is a type of oil drilling where you inject fluid brine into the shale to free the oil.
Well, Harris said in 2020, I made it clear that I would not ban fracking. And of course, Dana Bash says, but in 2019, you said you would ban fracking. And the look on Harris's face was like,
yeah. Oh, she called me out. How do I respond?
This is CNN. She's not supposed to do that.
Right. So even though she didn't push as hard as I would have liked, it's like, okay, but what made you change your mind? And she actually did ask that about fracking. What made you change your mind? And she actually gave her like a multiple choice answer. Is it that you've been in the office now? You've learned more? You've got more experience?
You have a Venn diagram of this?
Right.
Anywhere?
She was like, here, multiple choice, take an answer. And Harris still kind of fumbled and bumbled around on the response.
But the way they edited it, when she would be bumbling like that, you'd get this longer 2 shot. So you'd see Walt just sitting there looking her like he's grumpy.
Well, I've not seen confirmation of this, but there have been some claims, people who, citing sources familiar, that Walz was not their first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh choices. He was like choice number 10 on the list, and a lot of other names that were floated, like Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan.
She would have been a lightning rod, though.
Yeah. Mark Kelly, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona.
He'd have been better.
Reportedly is who Barack Obama wanted to be the nominee, but then Biden crossed him up as revenge for being pushed out. Biden crossed him up by endorsing Harris. It's like, okay, now how do we push Harris out? She's a woman of color, and Biden just endorsed her. Because to be honest with you, I think Senator Mark Kelly, I don't know much about his policies, but the fact is, he looks like a guy who's, he's a former astronaut. Okay. So he's a guy he's got military service. He's been in space.
Real military service, unlike Governor Walz.
Yeah. So he would be a guy I think Trump would have more trouble beating in the election. But, and that was the reason Obama wanted him, because they know that Kamala Harris is an intellectual lightweight, and she doesn't come across well when she gives these answers that are condescending. And we all love a school bus, don't we? Because
it's a bus you take to school.
We don't want to be this dismissive of the people running for the highest office in our land. But I'm sorry, Kamala Harris, I'm just surprised more Democrats aren't saying, we did not vote for her. We didn't vote for her in 2020, which is why she dropped out of the race.
Yes, but imagine if you are the leader of, let's say, North Korea or Saudi Arabia, or Qatar or South American country, name any of them, who is going to sit across the table from her.
Any culture where toxic masculinity is actually considered a feature, not a bug, and you're sitting across the table from her and her team, boy, no.
She starts smiling and laughing. And
think what you will of Donald Trump. I've got to believe that they have more respect for Trump, even if they think he's crazy, which
is a feature, not a bug, when it comes to dealing with other countries.
Like in baseball, you bring in the relief pitcher who can throw 100 miles an hour, but he's not always over the plate. When you're the batter, you're not digging in quite as deeply because you might have to jump out of the way. I think that's the analogy for Donald Trump. He's a little bit wild, and you might not.
But coming from a business background, when Trump gives you an answer, it may seem like it's made up, like he's not really sure what he's doing, but he says it authoritatively, and he looks you in the eye.
That's it. Harris was not looking Dana Bash in the eye for most of her answers. She was looking around, which, according to Jesus Enrique Rosas, as you say, his body language analysis, pointing out, okay, this is what you do when you're
evading or dissembling, and when you'd see the long shot, it was obvious she had no paperwork in front of her, so she wasn't looking down to read from a list.
Right.
She was trying to recall or make something up.
She's been in the office 3.5 years, which is another question Bash asked. So you're saying you're going to do these things on day one, but you've been in the office 3.5 years. Why haven't you done them already? And that's a really good question.
And she was asked about the economy, and we've seen her statements that she wants to have fixed prices for groceries, trying to help the middle class. But first of all, that would cause a nightmare in the economy.
Yeah.
I believe that some of this stuff is coming from her father. Her father taught socialist economics.
Yep.
It was actually called socialist economics. So she believes that somehow socialism will fix the economic woes of this country.
Yeah.
It will not. And when she says, well, that the inflation rate is only 3%, if you look at stats for the last 100 years, the average inflation rate year over year is 3%. And currently, in the last 4 years, it's gone up and down, and it's currently being listed at the official government sites as 3%. I don't know what Shadow Stats would say.
Shadow Stats, I'm looking it up right now. And the reason we bring up Shadow Stats, which you can find at shadowstats.com, is that the United States government has changed the formula by which it calculates the consumer price index
day by day almost.
Yeah, it's been politicized. These numbers have been politicized. They changed the numbers during the George H.W. Bush administration, then again during the Clinton years, so that the official rate now is much lower than the actual rate. So the official rate is running actually at 4%. So Harris misspoke.
Too bad. But
not too bad, but the actual rate is closer to 7.5.
Yeah, that's more like what it actually is when you take a look at over the last 4 years, the difference in a pound of ground beef.
Yeah. And now that's based on the 7.5. That's based on the way it was jiggered in 1990. If you go back to the way it was calculated in 1980, which was the Reagan revision, the actual rate, the way it was calculated prior to 1980 is actually closer to 12.5%. That sounds more accurate.
Those of you who are sitting there and thinking, when I go to the grocery store, I can't buy a whole list of things that are healthy and nutritious for my family. I have to buy macaroni and cheese or rice or whatever. The less healthy carbohydrate meals that are cheaper to provide. Fill your belly kind of stuff. That's the stuff that my mom made for us when I was growing up. We ate a lot of beans and rice because it was cheap. It was cheap, and it did fill our bellies. But she would try to supplement. We had a garden. Most people in America don't have vegetable gardens. You can almost do without a lot of meat if you have access to some eggs, if you've got chickens, if you've got cows. We're not talking about fiberglass cows, real cows. If you've got real cows and real chickens and a garden, you can sustain yourself pretty well, especially if you've got access to animal fat. I grew up on lard.
Right, which is a lot healthier than Crisco.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Vegetable fat is not nearly as healthy.
A lot of problems with seed oils. This is one of the reasons Robert F. Kennedy has dropped his presidential bid and is backing Trump, because he believes that Donald Trump sees what he does, which generations of kids in America who are growing up obese and unhealthy because of all the ultra processed foods and the use of cheap food additives like seed oils instead of healthier organic foods.
It used to be, and we're probably going to end up going long, but it used to be that you would make food with animal fats, with lard.
Right.
You would eat meat when you could get it. You would have, like I said, grow your own garden, and people were thinner. Obesity was very rare when I was a child. Cancer was far more rare when I was a child. Heart failure was much more rare. Cardiovascular issues, much more rare. It was when we got away from animal fats and started substituting fat with more sugar.
Right. And then substituting cane sugar with
who knows
syrup.
What it is.
Yeah. Well, we pray that those policies that Robert F. Kennedy talked about a week ago Friday are
that would be so wonderful.
Implemented. Big food, big pharma, making a lot of money off of the health epidemic caused by the poisons in our environment, the poisons in our food and in our medicines.
Yeah.
Hopefully that can be turned around, because you just can't be a productive member of society if you don't feel well, which is why Skywatch TV, Joe Artis Horn, the Horn family, offering now through Eden's Essentials, edensessentials.com, supplements for that reason, because if you don't feel well, you cannot be effective for our King.
And Eden's just recently added olive oil.
Yeah.
To its line.
Yeah, I need to go. I was supplementing with olive oil, just taking olive oil on a daily basis.
And the best olive oil you and I have ever had is over in Israel.
Right. Yep. Well, a couple of other things I do want to talk about. The potential of World War III, thanks to Ukraine. Ukraine, beginning of August 6th, invaded southern Russia around the city of Kursk. Significant because Kursk is home to one of the largest nuclear reactors inside Russia. The IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Association or administration, I guess. They went to the Kursk power plant and held a press conference, basically summarized it in one line: don't attack nuclear power plants.
It seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, you would think. Think. Corporate media in the West has been reporting on the success of the Ukrainians in pushing into Russia. They claim something like 140,000 square kilometers or something. But when you look at the map of the changes in who's controlled what territory since this war began a year ago, February, it's like a small little bump on the northern part of Ukraine extending into Russia, whereas Russia's got all of that area in the east of Ukraine, plus, of course, Crimea.
And of course, this whole war, which has been going on for 2.5 years?
18 months, I think. I think it began a year ago, February.
Anyway, it's been going on far too long.
Right, yep.
And probably at this rate will not resolve for a long, long time. It's costing our economy a lot, because billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of material have been sent over to Ukraine to bolster. And by financing that war, it's showing Russia that essentially they are at war with NATO. They are at war with the West.
Mm-hmm.
This is costing our economy, and I'm going to get into something else here in a second. I'll let you say what you want to, but it's also getting to the economy and what Harris actually said.
Okay. Well, there are a couple of things I wanted to add here. First of all, you're right. It was 2.5 years ago. It was February of 22.
Yeah.
It's like,
I know,
hard to believe it's gone on that long, but really it was an extension of what began back in 2014.
Exactly.
Which was one of the color revolutions that we helped facilitate, and we pushed out
the Orange Revolution.
Well, that was the Maidan Revolution. The Orange Revolution was during George W. Bush back in 2004.
Well, then it goes back to that.
Yeah. There's been we've been meddling in Ukraine for a long time, and it has not benefited the people of Ukraine. This war for 2.5 years now, 600,000 dead Ukrainian kids, about 100,000 dead Russians. Sir Keir Starmer and his defense minister.
Don't even get me started.
Yeah. This is a bit surprising. The Labour government of the UK apparently wanting to show that they've got just as much, as the previous
Yeah.
low testosterone
I got some
government.
dangly bits.
Yeah, exactly. They've reportedly been discussing how much credit they want to take for what Ukraine has managed to accomplish in Kursk. The Challenger 2 tanks that they've sent over there, which were purportedly indestructible, turned out not to be. And the Challenger 2s were withdrawn from the Eastern Front in Donetsk and Luhansk.
Mm.
But they have been used along with British-made drones in the Kursk invasion. In fact, the Times of London reporting that Starmer and his defense minister wanting to talk about how much credit the UK should take. In a sense, almost portraying it as a British invasion of Ukraine. It's like Starmer wants to say, see, we're leading this, and come on, Biden, don't you want to join in the fun? Trying to drag the United States into this. And at the same time, on Thursday of this week and yesterday, Friday, the head of the office, essentially Zelensky's chief of staff, Ukraine's President Zelensky's chief of staff and his defense minister are here in the United States. And the defense minister met with our Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, yesterday. Ukraine is trying to get permission to use the HIMARS missile system that we provided to strike targets deep inside Russia, including Moscow. They want to use American weapons to strike deep inside, and Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov basically saying this makes United States a co-belligerent in the war.
Exactly. World War III.
Yes, exactly. And for whatever reason, Starmer, I mean, again, you want to look at a low-T individual, Starmer wanting to, I mean, there's a video out there of him hitting a bag, a heavy bag in a bag, and it's like tap, tap. I'm 62 years old. I could have hit the bag harder than Starmer did.
I could probably hit it harder.
I mean, not that that's any indication of his ability to lead, but it's like, look, you got cameras on you. This is not a good look. It's like Michael Dukakis, as a bobblehead on a tank showing his, look, see, I can I can support the Army too.
About all that.
Oh, anyway, the fact is Ukraine is trying to drag the West in. This battle around Kursk is like their battle of the bulge. It's their last throw of the dice.
I think Starmer is trying very hard to appear strong when in fact he has been a nightmare for the UK ever since he was sworn in. Mm-hmm. Just a nightmare. Yeah, he is a bobblehead. But don't get me started on that.
So Ukraine and the economy.
Harris, and she's said this elsewhere, but she has been saying that she would like to give first-time homebuyers, $25,000 for a down payment.
Right, yeah.
That's just going to drive up the price of a house.
Well, it will. And I can speak to this having been a full-time realtor for a while early on, going back more than 30 years, but still, that plus an econ degree means I can say with some confidence that the reason real estate values in the United States have inflated so rapidly just in the last few years, but also we saw it back in the early 2000s, saw it also back in the 90s when Alan Greenspan started pushing Federal Reserve's main interest rate to banks to an unnaturally low level. You basically create more debt. You throw more money into the pursuit of the housing stock. Mm-hmm. All right. It's the law of supply and demand.
Yeah.
When you've got one commodity and another commodity, and money is just a commodity. Mm-hmm. Apples and oranges. If you've got 10 apples and 10 oranges, the rate of exchange is roughly 1 apple for 1 orange. But if you increase the number of apples to 20, it'd probably take you 2 apples to get 1 orange.
Yep.
The same is true with money. If you make it easier for people to get loans, or you give people free money, and that's in air quotes because no money is actually free. Somebody's got to pay that bill someday.
It's the taxpayer.
Taxpayer pays it. You're putting more money into circulation, chasing that particular product, and the value of each individual dollar goes down. So when you see home prices going up, if it's not because somebody struck oil or found gold on the land, it's because more money is available in that market. And that's what's going on with home buy. Look, if we were getting ready to sell our home and we knew that first-time buyers had an extra $25,000 to put down as a down payment, we just raise our price to $25,000.
Yeah.
The same is going to hold true in California because California is taking it even further. They want to make available 20% down payments to new arrivals.
Yeah, and understand that a lot of homes start at $1 million in California.
Yes. up to 20%, 20% up to a value of $150,000.
Ah.
So there, if you're an undocumented immigrant or what we used to call illegal alien,
Yeah.
if this bill passes in California, which it probably will because Democrats have captured the state, illegals will get down payment loans that they won't need to repay until they resell the home. And even then, they only have to pay off 20% of the increase in they pay off the loan plus 20% of the increase in value.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, that assumes that real estate is going to continue rising forever. And we saw it in 2008 with the subprime mortgage. Right.
We're getting really close. And speaking of that, I have to say,
communist economics. It never, ever, ever works.
It never does. Well, I have to say one more thing that Harris was asked about, and that has to do with the illegal immigrants. And her response was, well, there are fewer coming in. And one reason that there are fewer coming in is because we've got laws in this country that if you come in illegally, you will be apprehended and you will be prosecuted. I know because I prosecuted them in California. And I'm the only candidate who did. I just thought, yeah, because Trump wasn't. Let's not even go there.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about your record and
borders. Yeah. Root causes. I chased down the root causes, and now there are a few coming. I'm sorry. When you look at the actual number of encounters at the border, it is still at record high. The border was essentially thrown open, in some cases, literally, as we talked about previously, in Arizona. There are gates over some of the well, in Israel, they call them wadis, but dry stream beds. Yep. But that during the rainy season, they start to flood. And so they open those gates while the water is flowing through so that trees that have gotten washed up in the flood waters don't knock the gates down. But Border Patrol was ordered to go to those gates and weld them open so that people could just walk right through.
Yeah.
This happened on her watch, as borders are. And now vertically, well, and as a result, and that gets to the story that we teased before the break, a video that has gone viral showing guys walking around with automatic weapons at an apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado, outside Denver, suburban Denver, which declared itself a sanctuary city. And so all of these guys come, hey, sanctuary. There was a story a few months ago, I forgot about this, about a representative of the governor of Colorado's office going around to some of these newly arrived people in Denver saying, here, we'll pay for you to take a bus to Chicago or New York, Los Angeles.
Just leave, please.
Just leave Denver. So the progressive governments who said, we're a sanctuary, now find it. Like in Chicago, the police precincts are being used for migrants to camp. O'Hare Airport, they've got migrants camping at the airport.
They are overwhelmed. And this gang from Venezuela, they make MS-13 look like choir boys.
Tren Aragua. They've been showing up on the radar of police across the country, New York, Chicago, apparently Denver now, because this video from a Blink camera, a security camera on somebody's apartment, showing these guys carrying these long weapons. Maybe they're not automatic, but they are certainly rifles. And they apparently have taken over this apartment complex in Aurora. So the mayor there, Mike Kaufman.
One. I saw that they took over as many as 3.
Okay. So Mayor Mike Kaufman said that the city has ruled that gang activities are a criminal nuisance, which gives the city government license to draft an emergency court order, evicting them and clearing them out. But where are you going to send them, first of all? Secondly, if these guys are better armed than the cops, how are you going to do this?
Bring in the National Guard.
Right. So things like this happening in our major cities, Democrat-run cities, where people in Chicago are angry at the city government there, which, by the way, Chicago announced a $1 billion budget shortfall.
Well,
socialist mayor there, Brandon.
Socialism does not work.
No. But Tren Aragua, it's a Venezuelan gang.
And you can go to Jesus Enrique Rosas. He is from Venezuela. He doesn't live there anymore because he was saying things that the government didn't like, and he had to run for his life. But he will tell you. He's got a video where he talks about this gang and how they originated and how dangerous they are. Yeah. They are brutal. They will go into other gangs' territories and start just assassinating other gangs that are running, for example, prostitution. Right. They'll go there and start just killing the women. They're like an invasive species that takes over and replaces the native species.
Yeah. So in Aurora, according to the story in the New York Post, these guys are targeting apartment complexes owned by out-of-town owners.
Mm-hmm.
They're not present on the property.
Right.
And so the people living in these complexes are suddenly now being told they have to pay their rent money to the gangs
Mm-hmm.
instead of the owners of the properties.
Right.
This
and
is
the owner is like, okay, what? I can't. Good luck taking the gang to court.
Yeah. It's almost going to require, as you say, National Guard, almost a military response, which is terrible.
I know.
But when we're living in a society now where what sociologists would call a low trust environment, where you've got to put all products in the store behind a glass case and keep it locked. I'd like to buy some toothpaste, please. Can I get some help to unlock the case so I can take the toothpaste to the...
That doesn't happen here where we live.
No.
And there are wonderful pockets in flyover America,
Yep.
in parts of America that are more rural, that are still like it was back in the old days.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to pray for those areas that they can continue to be sort of a sanctuary for Christians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We may need more and more of that as time goes on. This story in the Post is really shocking because the mayor of this city is saying, look, we need to get them out here. This
It's
same
blaming
gang,
the Dems.
Tren Aragua, is members of the gang that were accused of shooting a couple of New York Police Department officers back in June, and that Georgia nursing student, Laken Riley, reportedly killed by a member of Tren Aragua.
Yeah.
So this is a national thing. But the guy, the mayor Kaufman of Aurora, Colorado, saying it's possible the federal government worked with nonprofits to put migrants in these buildings, which then attracted the Venezuelan gang members to take over those buildings. But the governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, said, no, the police intelligence about the presence of the gangs there is they called it the purported invasion, is largely made up. That the locals on the ground who are dealing with this...
Well, I want to see the governor go to to himself and go to those buildings.
So, we know you've got security camera video showing these guys walking around with long guns.
Weapons.
Breaking into it. But what are you going to believe? Us or your lying eyes?
Yeah.
So, this is what the open borders are bringing to our big cities.
Okay, so let's just sit down and calm down for a minute. Because Derek does news all the time. So this is what he digs into. I dig into news, but into a lot of other things. The bottom line here is we who follow Bible prophecy have been expecting the world to become chaotic, divisive, angry, threatening, dangerous, especially for Christians. When it happens, we go, what?
Yeah,
We've got to stop this. Well, yeah, you have to take a stand. That's what Ephesians 6 is all about. But we're not taking the stand necessarily against the human beings. Yes, they're dangerous, and we need to protect our children. We need to protect our families. It's a spiritual battle. It is a spiritual battle, and that's what we have to remember. So much of your fighting will take place on your knees.
Yep.
And rejoice when you see these things.
Yeah, Jesus said something about ethnos against ethnos.
Yeah.
Nation against nation. Ethnicity against ethnicity.
Tribe against tribe. And that is where we're going. But remember, the Lord told us these things in advance so that we wouldn't panic when it happened, so that we would see this and understand. He told us, but he also told us this, that he was coming back. And that he was going to come back for us. And he would be taking over this corrupt world, and he would be the king. He's the invisible king right now because he's not visible to the world. We know he's the king. Soon the world will know he is the king.
Amen. Yeah, not all of them will be happy about that
The return of the
either.
king is coming.
Amen to that. Well, let's dive into a question here and then remind you of a couple of things that are coming up, why we won't be here next weekend.
Yeah.
And
I'll be here.
You'll be here, but the PID radio will not be here.
We will not be here.
Yes. Question. This is from Tracy in the questions for Sharon section.
Hi, Tracy.
But I think this is probably for both of us. With your perspective on how much you've been harmed by media, not sure what we mean by harmed. We need to define that. And your understanding of Jonah. If you know a definite terror attack is upcoming, where would you put that info? What would you do? Interesting hypothetical question, because
Boy.
I don't think we have access to any sources where we would know about a definite terror attack
No,
before
you and I
anybody
don't.
else. We would find out when it broke in the media.
We really would. What Derek and I do is we look at trends and we look at how things are moving. When you're looking at a ray, which is a starting point and then following an arrow,
Right.
you can sort of figure the arrow is about to go through this, this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
So we can sound like we know exactly what's coming, but the fact is we're just using our intelligence and logic. So yeah, I can kind of say this is what I see coming. And much of that's based on Bible prophecy. The Lord has not said to us, other than as our Great Commission, He's not said, Derek, Sharon, I want you to go to Nineveh and tell them I'm about to destroy them.
Yeah.
That's the Jonah moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What He has told us to do is lift Him up, crucified, risen, and coming again. Love our neighbors as we love ourselves, and love Him with all our hearts, souls, and minds. That's a daily thing. That's part of our daily walk. And if someone comes along and tries to knock us off the path, if we see wolves or hear wolves howling in the distance as we're following our shepherd, we look to Him because He's got a rod and a staff. That's where our comfort comes from. Thy rod and staff, they comfort me because I know that I've got defensive armor on and you're going to take them down with your word. So I think the bottom line is spend as much time in the word as you can.
Right.
And love the people around you.
Because if you're well grounded in the word, then what comes in the news each day will not throw you off balance for very long.
I guess that's why I don't feel like I've ever been harmed by the media.
Yeah.
You know, you guys get to say what you want to, but the bottom line is our King is coming back.
Now, looking at some practical things, how we share information. Clearly, we would share information through the app here. Thank you for using it. We also have Telegram channels, which, we didn't talk about that. The CEO of Telegram, Pavel Durov, arrested in Paris.
He has been because he didn't play ball.
He didn't play ball, and Elon Musk's X has been banned by the country of Brazil because he wouldn't play ball there either.
No, and he said, fine, I'll take my toys and walk away.
Yeah, but we do post information to Telegram. I thought it was encrypted. Even on the groups. It
used to be.
Yeah. Private messages on Telegram are encrypted, but the channels that we set up are not encrypted.
That's
so
fine with me. It's just another avenue to share information.
Yeah. You can also follow us on X, formerly Twitter. We share a lot of information there.
And it's a pretty open forum. Elon Musk has been really big on free speech.
Yeah. So follow us on Telegram. We've got a Gilbert House Fellowship channel or Gilbert House Ministries channel there. Sharon's Room. And then I've got Derek Gilbert's View from the Bunker there.
Yeah, we'll put links to those.
Yeah. Well, there are links at
gilberthouse.org.
Yeah, and I'll put them in the show notes as well.
Okay.
I've been putting them in the follow us section, but I think I need to put links to all of our channels. So I will do that in the notes below this program, wherever you are consuming YouTube or our app or wherever.
And by the way, here's an announcement that you may not have seen on Facebook, but Amazon has released our new book early.
Yeah. Yeah, The Gates of Hell is available now in paperback.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be until October 15th. I'm not sure if Defender decided that they were going to do it early, but the fact is you can get it, and it's already trending in the top 10, and in one category, it's number one.
Number one new release, yeah. It's also available on Audible if you want an audiobook version. That's also dropped.
So you can get the print and Audible. Kindle isn't available until October 15th. Yeah. So that's kind of what made me think maybe they were all going to be, but I don't know. Yeah. But the fact is, they're there.
They're there. There will be programs about the book coming later this year from Skywatch TV. We don't know when yet. I think it's part of the fourth quarter push. So there will be an offer there, fourth quarter from Defender. So if you want to hold off and wait for that, that's fine. If you want to get the book at Amazon and push it up in the ratings so people who've never heard of us get exposed as a recommendation, that
would be great. So it's called The Gates of Hell. It's written by Derek and myself, so you can just type in Gates of Hell Gilbert and you'll find it.
And we got some new information in there about the Gates of Hell and about that valley between Mount Hermon and the Sea of Galilee, which is the valley of the shadow of death.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Also, we've got T-shirts and mugs. We're also working on PID radio.
Oh, I know. Trying to get PID radio shirts and hats.
Yes. Need a new PID radio cap.
Well, I wear my old one all the time when I go outside.
So you can find that at the front page of our store, at gilberthouse.org/store, as well as links to Simply Clean Foods. Mm-hmm. And boy, their vacuum-packed coffee. Good stuff.
Oh, good. And also the Armored Sheep podcast will be coming soon. I've just about set up the lighting the way I like it.
And then I went and messed it up again.
Yeah, you did, but that's okay. I fixed it again. It was a combo because I replaced. Anyway, it's set. Yeah, you had moved my camera. You had unplugged my camera.
No, you have the front-facing light turned dimmer than I prefer.
Oh, very dim. I had it turned almost all the way down. I'll show you how I set it. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be doing that podcast very soon. And also want to remind you there are some places we're going to be appearing. There'll be a conference up in North Dakota very quickly.
Yes.
And that's why Derek is gone next week. You can find all of the places we're going to be virtually or in person at our website.
gilberthouse.org. Also, go to the calendar section and look at upcoming events on our app.
App.
In North Dakota next week with Doug Hamp, the Inspiring Women webinar, sharing part of that the first weekend in October. First week in November, November 6th through 13th, our solidarity mission to Israel. Obviously, what is happening there now
may change those dates. But we are going to go back to Israel.
Yes.
Regardless.
So latest information on that always at gilberthouse.org/travel. And first weekend in December, the 5th through the 8th, the Christmas in Branson Prophecy Conference from Prophecy Watchers will be there for that.
Oh, excellent. So
tomorrow.
Get the app.
Yes, get the app. And tomorrow morning, we'll be back into the Bible study, back in the Proverbs. And tomorrow evening, I decided for this week's View from the Bunker to take the video from the presentation I gave about our Israel mission in the spring.
Good.
Because the production values of the team at Harvest Revival Center, showing the video clips and
really
the images, you get a better look at that. I know I did a prior program that was recorded for Hear the Watchman, where I talked about what we did. But the presentation, because of the way they were able to switch and show you the slides and show you the images and the video that I was showing on the screen to the people at the church, makes it a little easier to see what I was talking about than in the program that I did previously.
Yeah, it's really well done. I don't know if you can still sign up. If you want to watch all of the Go Therefore conference presentations, you might still be able to sign up. Go to gotherefore.conference.com. And I think Mike had extended that sign up.
Right. And very much worth doing to get the access. I don't know.
Carl's presentation was incredible. By the way, Carl Gallups is going to be our very first guest on the all-new and improved Bible's Greatest Mysteries, which is returning.
That is coming back very soon. Yep. So, yes, Carl was here, and we recorded a couple of programs with him about his presentation in Ohio. Yeah.
And he was on Unraveling Revelation.
Right. That'll be coming up. First one of those two will be on Monday.
I did 3.
We did 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. 2, and then we had to go to lunch. Does that mean lunch?
Well, lunch. I mean, come on, Carl. Can't you go without lunch?
So anyway, keep up with us at website gilberthouse.org or just get the app. And until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. And for Grace and Glory who are inside, we love you. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @PID Radio or the PID Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.